As a way of looking at the piece, we've asked the panel to deconstruct an example, the Canberra International Music Festival, which is produced and presented by ProMusica. Are you all familiar with this festival?
Yeah.
I'll just give you a little intro, and then I'm going to ask Helen to tell us more about the festival itself and from her experiences and in covering it and enjoying it and attending the events. ProMusica is a non-profit community organization founded in the 1980s by the late Edith Butler and a group of music lovers, with a vision to nourish and contribute to the musical life of the nation's capital and its region. ProMusica's principal activity has been the Canberra International Music Festival, founded by the then president of ProMusica, the late Ursula Callas. The first festival in April 1994 won the Canberra Critics Circle Award for Music Innovation. Since 1997, the festival has been an annual event, held over 2 weeks in May each year. In recent years, it has established itself as a national event, drawing its audience not just from Canberra, but from across Australia. In large part, this is due to a gift in 2006 from philanthropist Barbara Blackman. Barbara Blackman's generosity enabled ProMusica to create new opportunities for emerging and experienced contemporary composers, to build a larger and more interesting repertoire for chamber music, and to stimulate an audience enthusiasm for new music as well as old. It has created significant partnerships with media, embassies, tourism, educational, government, cultural, and business. Ticket sales have continued to increase each festival since 2009, with a 25% in 2012. The current artistic director of the festival is Christopher Latham, and since June 2008, he has drawn on his extraordinary range of experiences as music performer and music administrator to realize the vision of Barbara Blackman and the ProMusica ensemble. Elaine, could it?
But I've been covering the festival since 1994. At that time, I was the editor of Muse magazine, a rather sadly lamented Canberra Arts magazine. It's lamented because it is no more. And then as arts editor from 1996 to 2007, I also covered it regularly. So I was right there, in a way, on the coalface. I knew the founding director, Ursula Callas, very well. Now, she was a woman with a lot of drive, but quite a good business head. But when it came to marketing, I'd say that Ursula kind of made it up as she went along. And I'll give you an example of this. In one of the third of the festivals, the famous Swiss flautist Felix Renkli was out here. And Ursula, who was very hooked on the idea of the autumnal image, and I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. Ursula decided that what we should do is have Felix out in the grounds of the Swiss embassy playing his flute with white cockatoos or sulphur-crested cockatoos around his head. So we had the photographer, and I was dispatched to buy the bird seed. No, Ursula bought the bird seed, and all we could get was black crows, you see. So this is the problem. This is the problem when you make it up as you go along. And it was it was in those days the Canberra International Chamber Music Festival, and it changed its name only since 2009, I think, has it been just music in general. Now, the essential view of promotion and marketing, or the view of that, was essentially amateur in those days. It was run by a small committee of music enthusiasts, mostly well and truly middle-aged, and the original version was of a festival with a focus on concerts in embassy. The visual motif was a musical instrument with autumn leaves falling around it. Rather sweet, but a little bit twee. This original model proved to be unsustainable because the enthusiasm of several embassies, notably the Swiss, the Brazilian, and the French, waned when their budgets closed up. So they had to find a different kind of a model and move out. This has been done quite successfully in recent years. Under subsequent directors Nicole Canham and Chris Latham, there's been a broadening of the outreach. and that was seen in late night concerts introduced by Nicole Canham at places like the Canberra Museum and Gallery, which were designed to attract a younger demographic, and Christopher Latham's Sounding the concerts, as in sounding the National Gallery, sounding the lake, sounding the Shine Dome, sounding the Arboretum. One big success last year in sounding the Shine Dome was a very unusual Steve Reich concert of minimalist music, where the audience was invited to walk around the Shine Dome, all around, and the auditorium as the concert took place. So Latham has been extremely innovative. However, recently he told me that the constituency of the music festival is essentially women aged 65 and older. It always has been, and in his view it always will be. So that's something that other panellists might like to consider. In terms of outreach to different generations, that has tended to be through the performers. Thanks to the ANU School of Music, which is still limping along at the moment after a rocky year last year, it is still possible to engage young musicians to perform in it. And that's where a more youthful constituency may be found, and possibly with some of the interstate and international visitors. But it's true that they started out using their newsletter. It's still true that the season tickets, which are probably a bit underpriced, we might get to that, are bought by those 65-year-old women plus within a very short time, and therefore your wiggle room is probably in the one-off tickets that go on sale later. So it was done by newsletter and contacts within the music community. The festival has never operated on a generous budget, so I've actually sat in the Pro Musica office and heard Chris Latham wheeling and dealing and saying things, well, like, we can't possibly accommodate you at a hotel, but we do have some generous billets and things of that sort. But the good news is that just in the last few weeks, the Australia Council has announced that it has designated the event and its organisation as a key organisation with the potential to secure regular ongoing funding. So that's quite a step up. From 2005 to 2008, which is the period when Sue would have been most familiar with it, it did undergo a period of rapid expansion, but it had to because it nearly died when Ursula Callis died. This happens very often in the arts in Canberra, by the way, when the one person who was the driving force died. She died in 2001, and she was given a posthumous art award at the Critics' Circle in 2002, which was the worst Critics' Circle Awards we ever had, because we gave one to the late David Branson, the theatre personality, one to the late Ursula Callis, the founder of the music festival, and one to the late Neil Roberts, the sculptor who ran under a train at Harman while trying to rescue his pet dog. And it was thoroughly grim, and I very strongly discouraged the circle from making posthumous awards, but one of them was to Ursula, at which point the festival looked as if it was going to die. And it was held together on a shoestring for a few years. It was very, very modest in its scope, and a lot of generosity from the School of Music. I've been thinking about some of our cultural assets, and I had it all, because I think you might ask us this later on, I had it all ranked, and I've decided to stick the School of Art and School of Music up the top. This came to me at about 3 o'clock in the morning, because they have had the capacity to sustain a great number of ventures when they looked as if they might go to the wall. With the appointment of Nicole Canham, a very bright young clarinetist, to the role of artistic director, and then the introduction of Barbara Blackman to the festival, it is absolutely true that the festival got a terrific shot in the arm, and a lot of very innovative thinking, and it's gone from strength to strength, there's no question of that. The festival now presents, I checked this yesterday, 25 to 30 concerts at its annual festival. It does have a few spin-off events during the year, And for the past 4 years it's been themed around Canberra and the Burley Griffin concept, and it's now moving on to another thematic refrain which it has previously explored in a minor way, namely Gallipoli. So in 2014 you're going to see a lot of focus on Gallipoli and music of the time of the era of the theme. So here's a festival that nearly went bust, and it's quite interesting to speculate on why that didn't happen.